To start with my career, I always wanted to be a teacher, and when I finished my senior Cambridge exam in Standard 11 Queen Mary School, I was wondering what subject to take because I was a great fan of Miss Shelton and she introduced physics, chemistry, bio, so I got very interested in that. At the same time, my love was English literature, and we had 5 books for literature at that time. We had Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Merchant of Venice, and Lord Alfred Tennyson's poems, and also Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, and Geoffrey Chaucer's Clark's Tale. So we had 5 books for literature, and we had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Jeffroy, and I loved literature. So finally I decided to take up literature. I went to Wilson College, which again was a beautiful college, and we had a superb time. And it has a wonderful heritage building, which I am sure all of you must be knowing about, being in Bombay. And I finished my BA over there. Again, there were wonderful professors, especially my Shakespeare professor, Shirin Kuchetkar, was an amazing, amazing professor. And if I had not got the love of Shakespeare earlier, her teaching us Othello and Twelfth Night and others increased that love so much. She would read in her amazingly expressive voice the text, and then her explanation was so beautiful. Actually, it was very strange. In college, many students always tried to bunk, and very often there would be empty classes. But we never did that except for once. And what happened was, when Shirin Kuchetkar, when our professor of Shakespeare would teach, everyone wanted to go listen to her lecture, even those who were not actually having that subject. And she, the moment she entered the class, she would close the doors. So we all rushed in before she could close the door, and all of us were listening with bated breath to her recitation and her explanation. So much of my love for Shakespeare has sprung from her teaching, and it has made my teaching easier because of the depth in which she went, So I finished BA with English literature. Then I wanted to do my Bachelor of Education because I did not want to teach in college. I wanted to teach in school at that young age of maybe teenagers. So I wanted to do my B.Ed. Therefore, once again I had to go to Queen Mary to do my student teachership. So 1 year, Miss Shelton supervised my classes from nursery to Standard 11. And at the end of that year, when I had to go for my theory year in St. Xavier's Institute of Education, she told me in April 1963, Rati, come back, the torch must pass on. So I went to college, finished my theory, and even before my result was out, I was back in school as a teacher, and I taught in my own school for 36 years of my life. Became a teacher, and then a senior school supervisor, head of the English department, and finally principal of the school, the only Zarthosti Queen Marian principal in the entire history of the school. When I became principal, it was the 125th anniversary of the Queen Mary School, and we celebrated and felicitated everyone tremendously. That was a year of great glory and victory. That's another story to tell about our struggle in school and how I, a non-Christian, finally became a principal of that school of ours. But to talk about my teaching, as I said, I loved teaching, and I started. Miss Shelton had the idea of giving as much opportunity as possible, both to teachers as well as to the students. So she took maximum advantage of the different courses that I had done. I taught in Queen Mary School in the early years. I taught English, I taught geography, I taught science, I taught physical education, I taught first aid because I had done these courses, and it was a great, glorious time because I was exploring and the children were exploring. And what is learning if not exploring? When I taught French, I taught them to make French toast, because learning has to be a joy, and that was the main aim of my teaching. And when my children were happy, I was happy. As I continued to teach, finally it became, I was teaching geography right up to standard 10. I loved geography because we had a super geography teacher when we were in school. Until today, I can rattle off the factors of climate, latitude, altitude, distance from the sea, nature of the soil, slope of the land, and ocean currents. And I can also rattle off agents of denudation. The sun, the wind, the rain, the frost, running water, moving ice, and the sea. What a wonderful geography teacher we had, where she had traveled the whole world twice, and she made us feel as if we were traveling. And when I used to dream, she would talk about cable cars going from one mountain to the other, and I would think, my God, how is that possible? And when finally, in 1996, when my husband and my daughter, we went to France and Switzerland, and we were sitting in a cable car, I was so excited, I would jump up to take a picture and they'd pull me down. I'd jump up to take a picture and they'd pull me down. But I had that experience, which Desire had started when I was only in standard 8 in Queen Mary School. So God has fulfilled many dreams of mine. And the teaching years have been so very beautiful because of the love of my children. And therefore I always say that if I am born again, I want to be born a teacher. For the love of my girls and boys, their mummies and daddies, their husbands and wives, their children and grandchildren. It's only love that makes the world go round. And till today, I'm in touch with so many of my thousands of children. Recently, about a month or month and a half ago, 5 of my students came after a gap of a few days with their grandchildren. What a joyful thing. I've got those pictures also with me. Coming to Shakespeare, that is really, I'm a real fan of William Shakespeare, because he is the greatest writer on earth. And he was born on 23rd April and he died also on 23rd April. Therefore, 23rd April has been announced by UNESCO as World Book Day, because they have announced William Shakespeare as the greatest writer of the millennium. That's an amazing thing for our children to understand, especially because in the ICSE board is the only board where we have William Shakespeare's text as part of the syllabus. What is so special about Shakespeare? Well, one thing I must tell you before I can start about Shakespeare is that it is the great classics that we have gone through with our children that has built up our entire value system. And to top it all is William Shakespeare. From childhood, I would say that it is very important for all our youngsters to have gone through Grimm's fairy tales, Arabian Nights, and fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen. So often people say, oh, these are all outdated, and talk stories about stepmothers and stepdaughters and whatnot and whatnot. But they have no idea that these tales can never age because of the value system that they are giving us. Only if we realize and we understand the values beneath, then only we can understand why they are so important. And then as we grow up, when I became head of the English department, I specially started a kind of a thing called supplementary readers, where we, beside the textbooks, we started a novel. For class 3 and 4, it would be stories from Greece and Rome, and maybe mythological stories of Krishna or Jesus or whatever. Then standard 5 onwards, in class 5 there would be Swiss Family Robinson or any adventurous book like that which would touch their hearts. And then in standard 6 it would be Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist or David Copperfield, and going further in standard 7 maybe Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and in the 8th standard Scarlet Pimpernel or stories of different countries of the world. And then of course class 9 and 10 would be the ICSE syllabus. Talking about syllabus, please look at my Kingfisher pendant given by my daughter recently and my Kingfisher brooch. These also have stories. The Kingfisher brooch is a beautiful one which my husband bought on an aeroplane for me. You know, in the aeroplane they have some shops and they come around showing different things and selling. So they came around with this Kingfisher. I looked at it and I was stunned because the Kingfisher is my favorite bird. Beautiful colors. And I just looked at my husband, he looked at me. Always he would look at my face, and when he saw that I wanted something, he would buy it. He had exactly $40 in his pocket, and the Kingfisher was for $40, and he spent his last $40 on this beautiful Kingfisher bird of mine. Therefore I'm wearing it and showing it off to all of you. Also the Kingfisher is very strange. It has another background story. We had gone to Kashmir. Miss Shelton had taken us when we were in standard 9, and I mentioned earlier that we played in the snow for the first time. And once I saw Miss Shelton walking into the forest. I loved her. I was really crazy about Miss Shelton. So I started following her. By mistake, I stepped upon a dry leaf. The crunchy sound. She turned round with a glare, looking at me angrily. I immediately shut up. She put her finger on her lips. So I understood she wanted silence. So I followed her very, very quietly behind her. We came to a little pool of water, and there on top was a beautiful kingfisher. In a second, it swooped down, took its fish, and flew away. What a beautiful sight, I will never forget. One more story. As I was in standard 10, standard 11, we finished our senior Cambridge exam in December 1958. So, Miss Shelton did not want us to hang around with her and do no studies and be ruined as students. So, she made us do the SSC exam also. Jan, Feb, March. In 3 months we finished the entire year's course and we appeared for the SSC exam in April. So we all have 2 certificates, Senior Cambridge as well as SSC. And then of course we went to college. So in the SSC we had a poetry book called Pattern Poetry. I still have that book, I can show it. And one of the poems was The Kingfisher. Now I am suggesting to you all, you better hunt in your Google, find the poem and read it. It's beautiful. Because I wanted to explain to our children the beautiful colors of the kingfisher and I didn't know how, one of my students painted a picture of the kingfisher and it is lying in my kitchen where I teach my students. I'm sure many of you must have seen it. So that is about the kingfisher. Similarly, there are so many poems with so many beautiful lessons, so many stories with beautiful lessons in life. And it's very sad that many of these classics have been removed from the syllabus of our schools recently. Why? Because they said they are all outdated and we should have Indian authors. Fine, have Indian authors. Fine, have some modern literature. But don't discard the classics whose value cannot be weighed with diamonds. It is so sad that nowadays they take books. Little children, they give books of the Holocaust, the concentration camps, of Hitler, and I get so upset. When my grandson was in standard 5, he gave me a book to read which he had been given in his school. Believe it or not, it was about slavery in present day India, in North India, where boys were just tied to kind of machines and they had to just go on mechanically doing whatever they had to do. How they were punished, how they lived their life. Was it a life at all? After reading the book, I could not get sleep that whole night. How can they give books like that to young children? Their answer to me is always, "Arey, they have to understand reality." Let them know reality when they have grown up. Children have to grow up with idealism, with romance, with beauty, with the joys of nature. Otherwise, how will they get the sensitivity that they need to get? And so I carried on teaching in a world where teaching was becoming mere exam, rotation learning, rote learning and tests. I have been in the system all my life and I've been fighting the system all my life, hoping that at some point of time we will come back to real education, which was there in our country, the Gurukul system, where there was integrated education, where the child learnt from farming to managing his finances. And here we don't teach them anything which is practical. It's a sad, sad world. There are 3 systems which are wonderful in our country and the world today. One is the Rishi Valley schools of Krishnamurti, amazing schools where there is real education. The Gurukul system, of course, was thrown out when we were under the British rule and we got the artificial system of education that we are having. Now they are talking about integrated education, which is actually going back to the Gurukul system. So the Rishi Valley schools are the one. Have you heard of the mother of Pondicherry, the Aurobindo Ashram? That's another system which is amazing. I have been there. I have been in the Matru Mandir of the mother, where the sun's rays comes directly down like a pillar onto a huge crystal ball, and we are just sitting there. Time flies by, we have no idea how. And the peace that passeth all understanding enters our hearts. There the schools, half the syllabus is taught through English. The other half is taught through French, because the mother was a French lady. When she was a young girl, like Joan of Arc, she had dreams and visions of going to Bombay, coming to India, going to Pondicherry and being in the ashram of Aurobindo. Her parents accepted it, brought her here. She grew up and she became the mother who is so greatly revered by thousands of people. And therefore, half the syllabus is taught through French, half through English. And believe it or not, every child's potential is blossoms, because they deal with every child's potential. Someone's may be dance, someone's may be music, someone's may be mathematics, someone's may be engineering, whatever it may be. Besides, no tests, no exams, no questioning whatsoever. Believe it or not, at the end of their course, they get one sentence of a certificate. This child has passed this class, 10th standard or 11th standard or whatever, in the Aurobindo University or college or whatever it's called. And they are accepted in any engineering college, any medical college whatsoever. The reputation of that institution is that great. That is education. And the third method, again I'm so happy and proud that one of my students has started it, the Waldorf method of teaching. Have you heard of it? Steiner, Dr. Steiner was the pioneering person who started this method. He believed, from Austria, he was an Austrian, he believed that the child has three faculties: body, mind and soul, and all three have to be addressed, while we are just breaking the brain and mind all the time. So in the Waldorf schools, and the Waldorf schools in India, in Bombay, in Hyderabad, was started by my student Aban Bana, my first batch, 1968 batch. I finished mine, Senior Cambridge and SSC in 1958, and my first batch passed out in 1968, 10 years younger to me. So the Waldorf method is a playway method where the children love to go to school. What is life and what is learning if it's not a joy? It's not learning at all. Blah, 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 learning by heart and throwing it out and vomiting. Who wants someone's vomit? Learning and teaching has to be widening of the child's horizon, not just reading from a book and blah, blah, throwing back everything at them. And that's what I've tried to do in my life. So the Waldorf method, she started the first school, it's called Trida. Trida because body, mind and soul. And they have no exams and no tests, and all through activities. And parents are trained in the method so that it goes on very happily. And the food is cooked by the parents in rotation. So they get homely, nutritional food, and up to class 8, no tension. Then of course, because they want to join with the boards, 8, 9, 10, they prepare for the ICSE. Now several classes, several years they have finished, and you should speak to those children. And another wonderful thing is, one day another student of mine rang me up and said, Mrs. Wadia, will you come for a Shakespeare session, because I want to teach. I've started a school, and you know what? The Golden Spiral is another Waldorf school started in Bombay, again started by a student of mine, Tasleem. And I was so excited. I went there, I put up the exhibition, I did the introduction of Shakespeare with them, and then they performed As You Like It, so well interpreted, which I went to see. The children were so happy. Only about 8 or 10 in a class. That's another thing, they get individual attention. Another student of mine, Arwa, was a teacher over there. So I'm so happy that any of my children are really following the right path, the path of true education. As I said, my student, she and her sister, they started the school with some other parents. What courage! It's not an easy thing to do. And then, why? Because the schools were not giving proper education. So, this school is also, this system is also a wonderful system. We are praying for a time when all our children have got the opportunity to really be educated in the right way. Coming to Shakespeare now, I know time is running out, but when I've been teaching Shakespeare, as I said, I was taught by the most wonderful professor. By the way, she wrote in my autograph book, which I still have with me, the difficult is that which can be done immediately. The impossible is that which takes a little longer. And so whenever a child says, Miss, I can't do this, there is no can't. In your life, in your dictionary, there should be no can't. If you say, I can, I will, you will do it. Happiness or everything lies in the state of mind, not in the condition of the body. And if we are geared towards happiness, we all will be happy. If we are geared towards sadness, then we all will be sad. I want all my children to be geared towards happiness. Albert Einstein said, there are two kinds of people in this world. One, as if nothing is a miracle. The other, as if everything is a miracle. All my thousands of children should be of the second category. Again, I'm wandering off from Shakespeare, but Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, there are a few things, he's for all ages. He lived in the Elizabethan period, though 16th century or so, and therefore the language is Old English language, and therefore it is difficult to understand unless your teacher has studied and explains it to you. There are mythological references, so mythological stories have to be told. There are biblical references, so biblical stories have to be told. And as I said, there are so many lessons to be learnt in life. For one thing, Shakespeare advocated. Advocated means praised. What qualities? Love, friendship, and gratitude. Love, friendship, and gratitude. If we have these three, we are kings on earth. And which are the qualities which he denigrated? Malice and fawning. What is malice? In Gujarati, the exact word is there. Khunnas. When you have malice against somebody, oh, he did that to me, I wish he will die, I wish worms will eat him up, I wish he will go to hell. Why should we wish anyone bad, whoever it may be, whatever they may have done? Because if you wish bad for anybody, that same bad is going to come to you and nobody else. So he was dead against malice. Shylock says once in The Merchant of Venice, if I can catch him once upon the hip, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. He was dying to take revenge. Though Shakespeare was all for Shylock, Shylock was not a villain, he was a victim. And Shakespeare, living in a Christian world, himself being Christian, he had the courage to lambast the Christians for harassing and torturing the Jews. And that comes out through the very powerful speeches of Shylock. So malice was one which we must throw out of our system, children. No matter how much you may want someone to suffer, don't wish it. It's not going to help him, but it's not going to help you either at all. Fawning. What is fawning? The literal meaning of the word fawning, F-A-W-N-I-G, is a dog licking his master's feet. For a dog it is wonderful, because he is showing his loyalty when the master comes home and he goes and licks his feet. But for a human being to lick the shoes of his boss or his teacher or her any politician or leader or king or queen or whatever, in order to have ulterior motives, in order to get some benefit for themselves, that is the lowest thing that we can think of doing. It means flattering a person. It means, in a very low term, which you may all understand, chamchagiri. And surely that every child of mine may understand, though never use that word. And Shylock says, how like a fawning publican he looks for Antonio. What does it mean? What does it mean? Why did he hate Antonio? Antonio was very cruel to him. He was torturing him. He would spit upon him. Jews were treated like that everywhere. Now, what was the actual thing? Fawning publican means what? Publicans were tax collectors. We know very well that in the world, if one community overrides another, if one community has victory over another, that community who has been overpowered, who is defeated, they will become second-class citizens. And the overruling community will be the first class citizens. It happened in Persia, in Iran, to us, to the Parsis, to the Iranis, the Zarathostri Iranis of Iran, where the Arabs conquered and we became second class citizens. When we became second class citizens, there was a terrible jizya tax imposed upon us, which is only upon the Persians, only upon the Parsis, only upon the Zarathostris, so that they would take away all our money. Similarly, the Jews were second class citizens and they had a special tax which the Christians did not have at that time. The governing group did not have. And very strange it is, but there are people who are cronies, there are people who are like satellites, there are people who are chamchas. So what the Romans would do, what the Christians overlords would do, they would look out and watch for some of the Jews who were fawning, who would be prepared to be cronies. So they would bring them, say, we will give you this favor, we will give you this much money, or we will give you this kind of a good facility which the others don't have. You go and collect the tax from your own people. So the publicans were the tax collectors, Jewish tax collectors, collecting money from their own people, because it was a very hard task, dirty task to do. Just like in USA, the Africans were slaves and they were whipped. These people would select a few of the Africans as whipping boys. They would be whipping their own people to get some favors from the governing people. Sad. It's a very, very sad thing to have. Never fawn upon anybody. Never butter up anybody. A disgusting thing. For a human being to fall so low is a disgusting thing. So these are the kind of values which we must have or not have, and these are what we grow up in when we study Shakespeare. Another thing about Shakespeare, he has very many universal statements which he makes, universal life lessons which he gives. For example, all that glitters is not gold. It has been coined by him. Appearances are deceptive. How true it is in life that we so often get deceived by outward appearances. And that's a lesson that Morocco teaches us. One more great characteristic of Shakespeare is his characterization. Amazing characters he has created. All human beings, we may forget the history of the Mughals or our civil revolution or whatever, but we will never forget who Bassanio was, or Portia was, or Shylock was, or Julius Caesar, Brutus. And because they are such real human beings that he creates, he does not create any villain as completely evil, nor does he create the heroes and heroines as completely good. We are all human beings. We have our weaknesses. So he also shows weaknesses in the human beings, in the heroes or heroines or whatever. Shakespeare creates real human beings with their good points and their weaknesses. And his four great tragedies are Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello and King Lear. Why? Why not Romeo and Juliet, which is the tragedy of the two lovers? There's one big difference. Romeo and Juliet died because it was their destiny. They were star-crossed lovers. From the beginning, they were from enemy families. But the great tragedies are all about the individuals who bring about their own downfall. And that is what each human being does in real life. For example, Hamlet, all of them were larger than life characters, amazing characters, great characters, wonderful characters. But each one had one flaw, one weakness. In Hamlet, the weakness was procrastination. Put off for tomorrow what you can do today. कल करो सो आज करो सो अब, अवसर बीतता जाए फिर करोगे कब. So Hamlet is always between this and between that, to be or not to be. He can never take a decision. Like Arjun in the Mahabharata, telling Krishna, I don't want to fight, these are my cousins, I don't want to fight, he is my guru. And Krishna tells him that to fight was also the right thing to do, because that was his duty, to fight for the right. So to fight for what is right is extremely important. To fight for our convictions, to fight for justice, to fight for truth is very important in life. So just as Arjun says yes or no, Hamlet says to be or not to be. Therefore, I have got articles which ask and which say that did Shakespeare read the Bhagavad Gita? Because there are so many examples which are similar. After all, East and West are the same, because human beings are the same, human life is the same, human philosophy is the same. So in Hamlet it is procrastination. In Macbeth it is ambition. He was a very great soldier fighting for his king, Duncan. He does such good work that Duncan promotes him. But ambition was so great, the ambition to become king, that he becomes depraved, he becomes tempted, and that ambition ruins him because he murders his king in order to become king. And that was his tragedy. Then Othello. Othello was an African from Morocco, so he was dark in color. But he fell in love with a beautiful, fair Desdemona, and she fell in love with him, because he was a very brave soldier and a very fine person. Unfortunately, their love was so great and so beautiful, but there was one villain, the only villain who was a real psycho, a real insane person, one who could not see anybody happy. There are people like that in this world also. They are not normal, they are abnormal people. And they cannot see anybody happy, but not only that, they like to see people suffering. It's unbearable to think of it, but there are people like that. So he was a sadist. A sadist is a person who loves to see other people suffering. Iago was the villain. He went out of his way to create such situations that Othello's jealousy was aroused to such an extent that he believed that his beautiful, fair wife had been unfaithful to him, and he killed her. Only later on they realized that it was all concocted by Iago, and he killed himself. But it would have not happened if initially there was not jealousy within himself. Everything that happens to us, we are responsible for. Nobody else is responsible for whatever happens to us, for whatever we are doing. I'm lying in prison, what to do? My friend told me to do that, stealing that. But what about you? You have your own heart, you have your own mind. You are responsible for whatever you are. You are responsible for being locked up in jail or whatever it is. So important for every child of ours, for every one of us to know and understand that we are responsible for our own actions. All this we are learning from Shakespeare. And the last one, King Lear, it was flattery. He had 3 daughters and he asked them, how much do you love me? The first 2 daughters said, I love you so much, I love you more than the world. The second daughter said the same, I love you more than anyone else in the world, which was not true because both of them were married. How could they love their father more than their husband? It is not natural. The youngest one was so disgusted, Cordelia, who really loved her father. She couldn't bear their hypocrisy. So she said, I love you as much as a daughter should love. He got so angry, he threw her out of his kingdom. And later, she was the only one to be with him, and yet both of them died a very terrible death. And both the sisters proved very cruel to him. So there are so many lessons in life that we learn through the characters. And another brilliant thing about Shakespeare, he has coined so many words, so many phrases, so many expressions that we are all the time quoting Shakespeare. Every other sentence of ours, some sentence, some expression is Shakespeare's. Therefore they say that if you really want to learn the English language, two things you must read and know. One is the Bible and the other is Shakespeare. That is what I am interested in, to teach the depth. And as I said, and very often if any child asks, Miss, what is important? I will always answer, nothing is important. Everything is important. I will teach you so that every word is explained, every reference is given. Then any question under the earth you should be able to answer. This horrible system of questions and answers is a terrible, terrible, terrible system. Here are 100 questions, here are 100 answers. You will get 20 from them. So you learn by heart, you learn by heart, and then throw out whatever. What is the sense? We are killing the thinking capacity of our children, and our Indian children are so intelligent. We are killing their capacity to think. When a child comes to me, the first important thing I have to do is to make that child think. So sad to say, some parents had come to me and said, Miss, you are not giving any questions and answers like the other teachers. You are not giving any tests and so many notes and things. I said, I'm sorry. I will teach the way I am teaching. You can ask me any question about your child, but don't tell me how to teach, because I will not kill the intellect, kill the thinking capacity of the child. I should not give them any notes. I have to train them to make their own notes. How would you like to learn of somebody else's notes by heart? So it is very important in life to learn the spirit of the text. And just now it is so sad that in the ICSE board exams, it started because of COVID. Two things, horrible things have happened. I wish I could reach out to the Delhi council and get it removed. Initially, English and Hindi were two languages, or any other language for that matter, was continued from class 9 to class 10, whatever syllabus, whatever literature text or whatever. Now, they have cut, believe it or not, Merchant of Venice, Act 1 and 2 is in Standard 9, Act 3, 4 and 5 are in Standard 10. Does it make any sense? If you ask for the character of Portia, can you ask only from Acts 3, 4, 5? Is it possible? They are ruining even the last wonderful text that they have, they are ruining it. And they are giving multiple choice questions. What does multiple choice question mean in literature? In historical subjects, in geographical subjects, in factual subjects, it's fine. But literature is the spirit. Reading between the lines is important. Implications are important. How can you ask multiple choice questions? This will be the ruination of all languages in our country or wherever it happens. Sad to say. Anyway, let's hope for the best.